what's up, guys? Coach Gaglione here. So this is going to be a little bit of like a bonus series that we'll kind of sprinkle in throughout our vlogs or throughout our Gags Goals updates. So this is footage from Bergen County Barbell and Halloween Havoc 3. So this is a meet ran by Bergen County Barbell at Great White CrossFit. They have a powerlifting crew in there. And these people I consider, close friends. Chris I've known for quite a while. If you guys aren't familiar with Chris Delafave, he's one of the most decorated, I would say 242 and 275 equipped lifters, had records, single ply, multiply, and limited. I want to say he has exceeded totals of 2,600 pounds in, kind of your multiply kind of poly divisions, and with the unlimited divisions, north of 2,700. So kind of gets to be really rare air once you are kind of at that 2,500 stage for equipped lifting. So really, regardless of whatever you think about equipped lifting, what I want to do for today is just kind of really kind of highlight, what it takes to be as strong as humanly possible, what it takes to just kind of be as strong as you can. In my opinion, equipped lifting is one of the most, purest expressions of absolute strength, because it's going to allow you to lift the most amount of weight humanly possible. And again, I want to kind of highlight some of the pros, the cons, the use cases of equipped lifting. You'll kind of see here differences in techniques and styles. Typically, once you kind of get into powerlifting equipment, you're going to usually see like wider stance squats, and just different techniques for the bench press and the deadlift, because you're going to be under a lot of compression. The squat suit is going to provide a lot of compression for your hip. So essentially what the squat suit does, it's going to resist hip flexion and also resist hip abduction and a little bit of external rotation. So essentially, you'll kind of hear a lot of equipped lifters, yell things like back, 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 or out, out, out. So basically what the equipment is trying to do, the equipment is trying to stand you up. The equipment is trying to pull your knees inward. So you need to actively push back into the suit. You need to actively force your hips open. And it's just going to be more of a hip dominant type lift. Your quads are still involved, and that's something where I wouldn't say it's a point of contention, but in terms of what I've kind of found when I was doing equipped lifting, I actually found a lot of benefit in actually training my quads, because they tend to get underworked when you're in the equipment, because it's such a hip dominant lift. There's not going to be as much forward knee travel, if any, in a multiply squat, in an equipped squat. So sometimes you have to think about, and we'll kind of get into the bench press as well, like what muscles are going to be undertrained, and those can be kind of valuable exercises to kind of do in an off season, valuable exercises to do. And you'll kind of see some raw lifting here. So you'll see this is the best raw lifter of the day. I think she ended up hitting an all-time record. It was something in north of 500 pounds in the squat. Very, very impressive performance. You'll kind of see here. So most of the lifters are going to be equipped. But again, one of my kind of hopes is that lifters can, appreciate the different forms of lifting. If you want to use a monolift, if you want to walk out your squats, if you want to use a suit, if you want to use knee wraps. And that's kind of another interesting thing where I think raw with wraps is one of those kind of weird categories. Is it equipped? Is it raw? And even with the advent of these really stiff knee sleeves, people kind of poo-poo on equipped lifting, but there's a whole host of people that are stuffing themselves into these tight knee sleeves and in the hopes of, adding 10 kilos to their lift. So at the end of the day, you want to kind of skirt the rules the best you can as an athlete. That's kind of, in order to maximize performance. So whatever you're allowed to do. And it does get a little bit tricky. I was actually slightly kind of naive and unaware of the point of contention with how equipped lifters kind of feel in terms of like the rule set for like RPS. So over the years, and I think it's maybe gotten better with people like myself, people like Jordan Wong, who have been trying to, change the narrative for RPS. But RPS, I think partly with, you have people like Phil Herndon. So the RPS primarily has always had the most opportunities kind of in the Northeast region. Someone like Gene Reischlack, and if you don't know who Gene Reischlack is, rest in peace. First man to bench press 1,000 pounds. And I believe one of the only men, not at this point it's not, but one of the only men, probably the first man to squat and bench 1,000 pounds in competition. And he did so. It was a pretty darn deep squat as well. So Gene was always someone that wanted to advance the sport forward. If you ever look at the RPS rulebook, he tries to get a lot of the fluff out in terms of what actually is going to kind of aid in performance benefit, what actually matters to the lifter. So, for example, it doesn't matter kind of what shoes you wear, it doesn't matter what underwear you have. In some regards, especially for the raw lifting, it's much more reasonable, I would say, in terms of you don't actually have to wear shoes and things of that nature. So if you want to kind of just pull in deadlift socks, that's fine, because it's not going to really alter the performance of the lift, and it's kind of more to the benefit of the lifter. What's interesting is that some of the equipped lifters of the modern era think that, or have the opinion that some of the rules might be a little bit more too stringent on the unlimited category. And I've kind of felt similar sentiments in certain situations. So for example, in my mind, unlimited should be kind of almost anything goes. But at the end of the day, you do need to have some sort of standard. You need to draw the line in the sand at some point. So in RPS, for example, and a lot of these rules are really they're more for safety of the lifter. And again, when we get into bench press, we'll kind of talk about that. So we only kind of allow a certain number of plies for, shirts and suits and things of that nature, because it can get like a little bit, you could put the lifter in a compromised position. But that's a topic for when we get to bench press. In terms of knee wraps are going to resist knee flexion, and they're going to kind of promote knee extension. So if you could think about, if you're adding a knee wraps or a stiff knee sleeve, that's going to almost give you like artificial quad strength, whereas a squat suit is going to be more artificial hip strength. But what a lot of people don't realize when it comes to squat suits, and in particular, your spine is still exposed, your trunk is still exposed. So if you don't have the strength and the stability to stand up with the weight, if you don't have the core bracing ability to stabilize the weight, you're not going to really get a lot out of a squat suit or even a pair of knee wraps. So just kind of throwing on a pair of wraps or just throwing on a squat suit is not going to automatically put 50, 100, 200 pounds on your squat. So for example, like at my kind of peak raw strength, I was around a 705 pound sleeve squat. And for most people with that kind of level of raw strength, they would probably routinely, I would say, squat in the 1,000-pound range in a meet. I only was able to muster up a 1,000-pound squat once in training, and I did so with pretty minimal gear. I think I just wore squat suits. I didn't wear any briefs or anything like that. I just recently posted a picture of hitting an 875 squat in training. So my best squat in just briefs. So just for example, so you guys know, the combination of like a brief and a squat suit with the straps up with knee wraps is going to be like the most overload and carryover you can get. And I would say probably it kind of varies person to person, again, assuming that you have the core strength to handle it. So most people can probably get, 300 pounds out of. So if you can think of it almost like 100 pounds, you might get 100 pounds out of wraps, you might get 100 pounds out of your squat suit, you might get 100 pounds out of, the added briefs and like tighter straps. So, but my best in competition was 900 pounds. So I wasn't getting as much kind of carryover as a lot of other people. Using myself as an example, again, at my peak strength, I was around like a 400-pound raw bencher, just shy of that. My best bench in poly equipment was 575. So again, not like a great amount of carryover. Most people can get out of a multiply shirt, over 200 pounds. With the band shirts, it's a little bit weird depending on how many plies you're doing. So, but most people are going to get like, north of 200 pounds. Now in a single ply, that might be different. And again, if you look at someone like Blaine Sumner, he was able to bench press 1,000-pound single ply. So with the bench shirt, it's going to be a lot more variable. Bench and Benny, Nick Benarakis is a good example. And again, I'll kind of talk more about bench shirts, but I think his peak raw strength was around 440, and then his best multiply bench was 820. It's still one of the top multiply benches, for that division. And then now he's kind of doing in the 600 range, mid 600 range, single ply. So, if the more skillful you are, the shorter your range of motion, you could definitely, and if you get more technical with the shirt is definitely going to have the most amount of variability. And if you kind of don't master the bench shirt, you're not going to be able to compete at the highest level in equipped lifting. And when it comes to deadlifting, what's kind of interesting is some of the records are actually lower than raw now. But it would be kind of interesting to see if some of the, best raw lifters, especially the best sumo raw lifters, put a single ply suit on or put a multiply deadlift suit on. Because I know, like for myself, I definitely, for example, my best raw deadlift is 625 pounds, just with, and then 635 pounds with straps. I've done a 650 conventional, and then my best, sumo deadlift is 701 pounds in the suit. I've done 700 on a handful of times, but never got credit for it in a meet. I did it once in a meet, but only got one white light. So unofficially 700-pound deadlifter, I guess. But anyways, when it comes to like squatting, one of the things I love most about, the squat for me is my favorite lift in terms of training with the crew. It's my favorite lift in terms of really kind of testing yourself mentally, because you have this weight on you have a weight on your back that could crush you. It could topple you over. One of my heaviest squats in a competition, I stood up, I smashed an 850 squat. Didn't quite get credit for it. It was a tough judging crew for that particular day. And I don't recommend this. It's an 840 squat. And I ended up kind of falling backwards with 880 pounds. So that was not fun. So, in terms of, safety and things like that, having the crew behind you is going to be so important. Having the safety straps is going to be so important. Having spotters and loaders that are paying attention to what you're doing, watching the barbell, making sure you're safe. Literally people having your back in case something goes wrong. That's going to be the most important thing. And then for me, the kind of metaphor of someone like literally having your back when you're squatting, and then having your back in life. It's a really kind of special thing. And again, when you have, it's not that it's necessary, but it's super helpful to have someone being able to save energy to get you in a squat suit, wrap your knees, call your depth, all these sorts of things. So that's going to be really, really important as you kind of progress in your powerlifting career. Again, if you are a walked out lifter, if you are a sleeved lifter, these things are not necessary. But just because they're not necessary doesn't mean that it's not going to be more beneficial to you long term. So again, when you're training with the crew, learning how to use the monoliths, learning how to work in with other people. If you listen to my podcast with Chris, we kind of talk about how you can still individualize the program. You could still get a lot of benefit from training with the crew and still kind of cater towards your strength level, whether it's adjusting the amount of chain weight you do, the accommodating resistance. And that's kind of where I think that, the equipped lifters really kind of have it figured out in terms of spotting, in terms of safety, in terms of also being able to manage the fatigue of the spine, of the nervous system, using the accommodating resistance to unload yourself in the bottom, using, that to being able to kind of stimulate the nervous system in a way that's extremely beneficial is going to be something that I think raw lifters will have to kind of figure out over time. If you look at, coaches like Michael Greeno that are using more variation strategically, as well as things like bands and chains, that way that his athletes can kind of feel some heavier weights on their back, but not get the fatigue and the damage that you would otherwise see in with a full range straight weight lift, and even things like, using a buffalo bar to kind of help alleviate the shoulder pressure, using specialty bars that don't have as much whip. One of the things that we've kind of highlighted in my podcast with Michael Greeno is some of the issues with, if you're an 800 plus squatter, on a power bar, that's going to be potentially something you need to consider, the amount of whip, the lower back injuries, and also just like kind of the judging standards. So hopefully you guys could see some of the benefits of equipped lifting in terms of hip protection, in terms of allowing you to work on things from a technical standpoint, allowing you to kind of work on things in a different way. So if you are someone that's into powerlifting for, 5 years, 10 years plus, it's very possible that you're kind of potentially starting to tap out on your raw potential. You might have some dings. If you're a former athlete like myself who wrestled, played football, I already kind of came in with extra mileage. So the more kind of joint wear and tear you have, the more mileage you have, it may not be feasible for you to, compete at a high level raw, I'd say for more than 5 to 10 years without taking some sort of break, without taking some sort of long extended off season where you can kind of build muscle, potentially go into a different weight class, those sorts of things. So there's different ways to kind of extend your powerlifting longevity, but a big part is going to be managing wear and tear, managing fatigue, and just kind of managing the absolute load on the bar, and also just kind of managing how many times you compete as you get stronger. So, the bigger the absolute load, the bigger the risk, regardless, of, if you're wearing equipment or not. But from like a joint health standpoint, and also just a standpoint of, from a coaching standpoint, what's really cool about equipped lifting, you can adjust. There's a lot more adjustments you could make. So it's harder to coach, but there's more opportunities to have a positive effect on your athlete when it comes to a game day situation. How tight the knee wraps are going to be, how tight the straps are going to be. With some of the suits now, they are adjustable with like corsets and stuff, so you can potentially make the suits tighter or looser, depending on if you have an adjustable suit or not. So that would be kind of like more of these unlimited type options versus a single ply option, whereas there might not be as much adjustability in terms of like the straps and stuff like that if it's just purely one piece without any kind of adjustment attachment points. But that's what I would kind of consider. And again, you can kind of notice here, there's no fireworks, there's no LED screens, but really cool atmosphere at Halloween Havoc. Great people, great support. And this is kind of what I think powerlifting is all about. And this kind of, when we kind of grew up in like the early 2000s, the heyday of Westside Barbell and equipped lifting. So with that being said, I'm going to let the video kind of play out, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you guys like to see more of these meet recaps and things of that nature, definitely check out Bergen County Barbell, and stay tuned for more. Until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.